I'm feeling really comfortable to be here with all of you today. I think this is the most comfortable I've ever been. Room with some doctors and physicians, so I know that if anything happens to me, I'm well taken care of. I want to thank every single one of you for being here, because if it wasn't for people who were willing to listen, willing to participate, willing to learn, and have that inquiry of, what is this about? I don't think I would be here, and I don't think that a lot of the good things that we have today on earth wouldn't have happened because of that inquiry. So thank you so much for being here. I also want to thank and just kind of pause and acknowledge the people that fought for women to be able to, for instance, be in this room as physicians, women to be able to have the opportunity to voice themselves, people of color, people being able to receive an education. And so I draw on all those experiences and the people that throughout history have opened the doors so that we can be a better and more just world. And although this might be the boring kind of portion of it, I think it's one of the most fundamental components of understanding, critically understanding our past in order for us to see where we're going into the future. And so I just wanted to really briefly go over some of the legislations and some of the things that made the education of undocumented people in this country possible. And so it was just recently in 1982 that a law passed, or the Supreme Court said denying education to people who don't have documents from kindergarten to 12th grade is wrong, right? And so we know we had Brown versus the Board of Education that laid that foundation. But Plyler versus Doe, which was fought in Texas, a little town called Plyler in Texas, practically opened the doors for young people like myself to be able to receive an education. And Plyler says that no matter the status of an individual in the United States, it's the law for children to receive an education. And so since then, we've seen a lot of young people receive an education. There's approximately in the country right now 2.5 million that have been able to do that. And from those 2.5 million, 80,000 of them become 18 each year. 65,000 of them graduate from high schools throughout the whole United States, and then 5 to 10% of them get to enroll in college each year. After that, 1 to 3% graduate. So currently right now we have about 80,000 dreamers across the nation that have been able to go to college, and only 8% of them have been able to move on from a bachelor's degree to a upper division or graduate program. So the timeline that we have seen, I was talking before in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education. Then you had FERPA, which allowed for privacy acts and for teachers not to start asking people's status. Plyler versus Doe, you had IRIRA, which is immigration legislation that passed in 1996. And then 2001, the DREAM Act, right? And this is kind of more or less around this time where my life in this movement really started. And in 2001, what happened was you had a high rate of young people across the nation that were dropping out of high schools. And one of those states that was really worried about this happening was Texas. And during that time, you had a governor, Rick Perry, who wanted to solve this, right? It didn't look good that his state has such a high rate of people dropping out of high school. Another another governor that also was looking at it was a governor in Utah. And then also you had in California high rates of young people, specifically Latinos, dropping out of high school. So what they found out was some of these students were undocumented, and they felt that because they didn't have a status and they couldn't go to college, might as well just drop out, 16, start working, helping the family out. So they decided to pass this in-state tuition legislation, which allowed these young people to actually go to college. And through that, a lot of young people started coming together and learning about the fact that they didn't have a status, but also fighting for educational rights. Many states have followed, and currently right now there's about 22 states that have some sort of in-state tuition or tuition equity laws. Oops, sorry. Next. So this is the map of states, and you have all different colors because there's different states with different legislations. You have states that, like California, not only have opportunities for the students to go to college, they also have state-based tuition or financial aid. Illinois has a form of that, and all of you have been able to push so that some students can potentially get some sort of loan programs. And the state of Florida was just one of the most recent ones to pass an in-state tuition legislation that said if the student has graduated from one of our high schools, went to 3 years of high school in Florida, and applies to go to a college within 24 months of their graduation, they could start school and pay the in-state tuition rate. But you also have states that are colored red. And these states are states that have actually done the opposite. They have passed legislation that says if you don't have a status, if you are unauthorized in the country, you are banned. You are not allowed, and the doors to our institutions are closed to you. So there are actually states where a dreamer, even if they want to pay as an international student, if they want to, take non-credit classes, they are banned altogether from being able to obtain an education. So I am part of a larger community, right? 2 million people. But one of the people that early on decided that my status, or me not having a legal status in the country, was not going to stop me from my dream. And when I was in middle school, what happened was that my sister, the oldest one, graduated from high school, and she tried to go to college, and she wanted to be a nurse. And I thought, oh, that's a good degree, right? That's a good career. They're going to allow her to go in. But when she went in, they told her, no, you cannot be a nurse. I'm sorry, you can't study this because you don't have papers. So she came back home crying. And that's when I first thought, oh my gosh, like if she wanted to be a nurse, they didn't allow her to go to school, what's going to happen to me? So then I thought, well, maybe I'll take the military route, right? Like if you want to fight for your country, they should be able to give you access to do that and afterwards go to school. So my second older sister, the next year, she was part of the ROTC program, was one of the high ranking. She got the Daughters of America award and went in and tried to go into the Air Force. And the Air Force tried every possible way to give her access to that education, or that be able to enroll, or what is this called? Enlist in the military. And they also said, I'm sorry, no. So then I thought, okay, 2 down, no more to go. What am I going to do? So I started taking AP classes and the honors classes, and as much as I could, because being a middle schooler, in my mind, I thought education is being in a classroom, right? And I'm going to absorb as much as I can, because when I graduate, when I cross that stage, when I receive my diploma, that's it. So I wanted to also be well-rounded, and I joined from the orchestra to the cross-country team, basketball, you name it, I was there. I had a friend that she used to complain because she was part of the yearbook. And she's like, my God, Gabby, like every page we turn, you're there. She's like, I'm in the yearbook and I'm not as much as you. But it was more than anything my desire to really absorb as much as I could, because my dream was to go to school, to go to university. And when I was in high school, I decided that I was going to start telling people my status. And I didn't really have fear, and I didn't understand the danger I was going through because I was a teenager. I didn't know the laws, or I didn't know what it meant to not have a legal status in this country. And so I started sharing my story and telling people, because I felt that I wasn't the only one. I knew that there had to be other undocumented people, and I knew that somehow someone was going to be able to help me. And because of that, I lost that fear that a lot of young people, that a lot of dreamers have throughout their whole entire life. We fear the police. We fear leaving the boundaries of our communities because we never know what's going to happen. We don't travel. We don't really do a lot of the things that other families usually do. And it's because of that fear that we have that, you know, one day we could be stopped, one day somebody could come and knock on our door, and that's it, right? Our existence as we know it in the United States is over. But because I started sharing my story early on, I lost my fear. And what happened was exactly what I thought. People said, oh, we could figure this out, right? Like, you're a good student. Somebody's going to open the door for you. And during at the end of my senior year, I met this family. And this family was well established, and they said, we'll help you out. We'll do whatever paperwork possible it is. And one summer, they invited me to come over and travel to North Carolina and work with them as, you know, just teaching the kids. And I played the viola, so I was teaching the kids the violin, the cello, and the viola. When I got there, I also asked if my sister could come because I was really afraid. This was my first time kind of leaving by myself and leaving my home. And when we got there, and as we were, I think, as soon as we left the first boundary, is when we came across this family that just started switching and really turning the tables on us. And we practically became, from being guests and going with them on a trip that was supposed to be a week, to being there for a month and being practically their servants. And not being able to leave because we were afraid that they were going to call the police on us, that they were going to call immigration on our family. And this family had promised that they were going to help me go to school, and so I felt that at least at the end of the day, they were going to do that. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and at 18 years old, I had to stand up for myself and say, this is wrong what you're doing, and I need to go home now. So we finally were able to return home, and fortunately enough, other people were able to help me, and I was able to go to school. But going through all of that, and knowing that at 18 I was experiencing all this stuff, it made me, and it gave me a sense of responsibility to open the doors of opportunities for other young people. And it gave me that sense of responsibilities that no young person needed to go through that experience in order for them to receive something that I wholeheartedly believe, and many people do too, is a human universal right, which is an education. So I made a promise that I was going to start fighting, and that promise led me to the DREAM Act. And in 2004, when I learned about the DREAM Act, I consumed everything that dealt with the DREAM Act. And I became an expert in it because not a lot of people knew, and not a lot of people were telling their story. So I would get flown to DC and other parts of the country to talk about this. And as I started growing in my leadership, I guess I started annoying some people, some legislators. And one day in 2006, I feel like it was yesterday, immigration came to my house, and they knocked on the door and they came looking for me. And it was very unfortunate because they detained my parents and they detained my sisters. And I thought, this is it, my world is over. But I realized once again that there was a lot of people, a lot of caring people, that I had built a community around me that decided to support me. And so we went on and fought. And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because if we leave this country, some of us are going to get to fight, but what if we get separated from our parents? I don't know if we can do that. And I think one of the saddest things that was happening during that time was the fact that my sister, in 2003, when she was pregnant and she was 9 months, she went to the doctors. And at the doctors, when we went in front to get support and help, these doctors turned her away. And they didn't want to see her because she didn't have insurance and because she was undocumented. And consequently, what happened was that when finally she was able to get to medical attention, it was too late and her baby had already died. And they were able to revive her baby, but her baby only lived on for 18 days.